What's up, y'all? Today I have a new different kind of video for you. Today I'm doing a tier list of Fall Guys rounds. So yeah, without further ado, I'll get started. Starting out, we got some Block Party. I'll just put it in beat it while I'm talking about it. So in Block Party, we got the little walls that kind of move with you. So this one, there's a lot of variance in it. There, depending on what round it is. There's a couple rounds that are a little bit harder, which I think are better. And those are a lot of fun. But a lot of the times in Block Party, it's like a free qualifier. If you don't make it, you're trash of the game. Um, so I feel like the fun variants of it are an A or S tier, but the bad variants of it are D or F tier. I'd probably actually say D tier. So I'll split the difference and leave this one in B tier right here. So next we got Gate Crash. Gate Crash is one of the first couple round games. Um, there's not a whole lot to it. I'd say of the first round games, it's one of my least favorite race games. I wouldn't say it's a bad game by any stretch, but it's just okay. So I'm gonna throw this one in C tier. Now we got DoorDash, sponsored by Desmond Ritter. So DoorDash, I feel like this game just kind of sucks. There's a lot of random chance to whether or not you do well or not. Sometimes you just kind of get body blocked through it just because it's so crowded. I think for DoorDash to be a better game, there would need to be like it would need to start out as wider and or just have people spawn in different locations. Like have everyone get their own set of doors. I'm not sure how that would run. Um, but yeah, I feel like this is legitimately an F tier game. So next up, we got some Egg Scramble. Of the team games, I feel like Egg Scramble is one of the stronger ones. But that's not saying a whole lot because a lot of the team games aren't my thing. Um, Egg Scramble, I feel like there's a little bit more strategy involved to it compared to games such as Hoarders. I would probably leave this one in C tier out of the team games. It's a debatable D tier. So next up, we got some Fall Ball. Fall Ball is like a classic. Whenever people think of Fall Guys, it's one of the classic ones that people think of. Um, this one is really dependent on how your team is. If you have a team that communicates and plays decently, it's fine. But if you have teammates who are shooting own goals, it really sucks. I'd probably put this in C tier, right in between Gate Crash and Egg Scramble. Oh yeah, I guess these tiers are kind of ordered between them. So next up we got some Jinxed. This one's gonna get a controversial take on my part, but I don't think Jinxed is a bad game by any stretch. Um, I feel like sometimes it kind of sucks when there are too many or too few people. When there are like 8 people on each team, that's like a good sweet spot where it's not too crowded. Um, but a lot of the times they'll give it to you when there's like 2 people on each team on like a duo final round or at the end of a game or early on when if you get jinxed early, there was like 14 people on a team. That's a little bit too many. Um, I would probably leave Jinxed in B tier. I'd probably put it above Block Party. Um, but yeah, so next up we got Fall Mountain. I feel like Fall Mountain is a pretty good end game. I feel like in general, a lot of the times the end games for Fall Guys are really good. Fall Mountain's obviously one of them. It's not an S tier game, but I feel like if it went on longer or maybe had a little bit more obstacles involved in it, it would be better. Just that way, if you get hit once, you can still come back and make it. But it's a decent game, and I like it a lot, so I'll leave it in A tier. So now we get the first S tier right here. We got some Slime Climb. I love Slime Climb. There are a bunch of good shortcuts you can take on it. There's some good griefing opportunities. It's just overall it's a fantastic map. I would say we'll see how this turns out after I go through every level. It is probably one of my top 3 in the game. So I just overall really like Slime Climb. I like how any number of people can qualify usually, which I think is a positive. So yeah, that's what I like about Slime Climb. So next up we got Fruit Shoot. It's not an F tier like DoorDash is, just because there's a little bit of stuff you can do, but a lot of the times in Fruit Shoot, it's just kind of like a, well, did you break your ankles whenever you jumped down from the starting platform and then tumble off, and did that happen to you multiple times in a row? If no, you're probably good. If yes, well, you're out of luck. And a lot of the times, it's just kind of like a, well, did three fruits get shot at you all at the same time, and did you get screwed by that? There isn't a ton of strategy in Fruit Shoot, um, which is why I kind of have it in D tier, but it's not a bad game by any stretch. So next up, we got Hit Parade. I feel like Hit Parade is one of the stronger starting games. I'm gonna drop it in A tier. I like it less than Fall Mountain. Um, there's some good opportunity to have a comeback on Hit Parade, but also if you get hit early, then you're kind of you'll be in a rough spot, but you'll still be able to make it. Hit Parade in general is kind of what I think when I think of Fall Guys. I think of a game like this, or it's kind of like a wipeout type game, but yeah, it's just overall a good game. So next up we got Hexagon. For those of you who know me, you know it's an S tier game. I love Hexagon. My title in Fall Guys is Hexagod, just because I'm cracked at Hexagon based games. Base Hexagon I would probably have under Slime Climb, just because I really like Slime Climb. But Hexagon is a fantastic game, and it is one of the iconic games of Fall Guys for sure. So next up we got an easy bottom three, worse than DoorDash, Hoarders. Hoarders, there's just there's not a lot to say about it that's positive. I feel like it's just a kind of a random game to see who finishes. And first of all, it's a team-based game, so it's like there's not a whole lot you can do in general. But also, it's just like the balls are moved too easily compared to something like Egg Scramble, where there are a ton of them. So if you build up a lead, you're safe. Whereas in Hoarders, if Hoarders was a 30-second game, it would be just as good as it is now. Just because it feels very random, and it's really hard to maintain the balls as they currently are. So next up, we got Hoopsie Daisy. This is a tough one. I would either put it in A or S tier. I'm going to drop it in top of A tier with the opportunity to revisit it later, as I'm finalizing some of these tiers at the end of the game. Hoopsie Daisy is just overall a really solid game. Even though it's a team game, it's the best team game in my opinion. And yeah, it's just a game of managing your space and racing other people to hoops, which is something I really enjoy. I like the managing space aspect. There's a reason why I like Hexagon so much. So yeah, Hoopsie Daisy is an easy A tier for me. So next up we got Jump Club. I'll put Jump Club at the top of B tier. There are a couple different variants of Jump Club. Some of them are really easy. Some of them are pretty hard. Specifically the ones where there's the 3 rotors on it. That one can get pretty tough. Usually it's hard to finish those ones. Jump Club, that's an easy B tier in my opinion. Not a whole lot to say. So next up we got Jump Showdown. Even though Jump Club's in B tier, I'm gonna say Jump Showdown is more of a C tier. I'd probably put it between Fall Ball and Egg Scramble. The problem with Jump Showdown as compared to Jump Club is that the games can go on for a really, really long time. And I understand it's a final round and you need a winner, but I would like to see like a timer based on it. So if you have multiple people who survive a minute and a half or 2 minutes, then there's just multiple winners. I've seen it go on for 5 minutes before. It's not a whole lot of fun to spectate. If you end up dying, it's not a whole lot of fun to play. It's just a weaker game than Jump Club in general, just because of how long it ends up going. So next up, we got Perfect Match. I'll probably put Perfect Match up here in the A tier. The old Perfect Match really stunk, but incorporating the center bar in the middle makes it a lot better. Just because it makes it so you actually have to not be brain dead while you're playing the game. Yeah, it's just overall, it's a pretty good game. There's a lot of good griefing opportunities for pranking other people. So yeah, there's an A tier game for sure. So next up we got Rock and Roll. I'm probably gonna put this at the bottom of C tier. This is one of those games that I feel like would benefit from going a longer time, just because this game usually lasts like a minute at most. If there was a little bit more time, then you could theoretically like throw in more obstacles or something and have the game go on a little bit longer. Overall, Rock and Roll is too short, so it just doesn't really feel like it's not a memorable game because it's not something that you really get invested into. It's just kind of a, well, did I screw up once? Well, I'm out. So next up we got Rollout. Rollout. I'd probably put this above Jinx tier. It's another survival game, which I have 3 survival games in V tier already, so it's telling you something. But Rollout is just a kind of standard move around the platforms and don't fall off. There's not a whole lot to it. It's an easy B tier. There's also the final variant versions of it, which I feel like are a little bit better. I feel like Rollout's a really good game for the kind of last man standing aspect of the game. So Rollout's a solid B tier. The earlier rounds, would probably be high C tier. Late rounds would be low A tier. It's a good B tier. So next up we got Dizzying Heights. Dizzying Heights, it's probably top of A tier. It's one of the best starting round games, just because there's a lot of it moves really quickly, and there's a lot of good opportunities to make comebacks if you mess up early, which I appreciate. Overall, it's just a fantastic game, and it's one of the best games in Fall Guys. So next up, we got Royal Fumble. Royal Fumble is the version of Tail Tag, but it's at the end of the game. I like Royal Fumble more than most of the other Tail Tag games, but I don't like Tail Tag games. So I'll probably put this at the top of D tier. It's better than Fruit Shoot for sure, but most of the Tail Tag games are some of the weaker games in my opinion. So next up we got Seesaw. Seesaw is an F tier game. I'd probably put it ahead of Hoarders just because Hoarders is not good in my opinion. But Seesaw kind of sucks. It's a game you really don't have a whole lot of control over. If the people in front of you want to keep throwing their bodies at a seesaw that's going to tip, you're out of luck. If you spawn near the back and you can't make the first cycle, you're out of luck. It's just not a very well designed game, in my opinion. Next up, we got Tail Tag. I'll probably put Tail Tag before Fruit Shoot. It's better than Team Tail Tag because you have a little bit of control yourself. But it's still not great just because, again, it's like do you really need it to be a minute and a half? The last 30 seconds are really the only thing that matters. Yeah. Tail Tag is an easy D tier. There's not a whole lot to say about it. So next up we got Team Tail Tag. Team Tail Tag, probably better than DoorDash. Okay, I'll have to move DoorDash to the lower right. It's similar to Tail Tag, except you're on a team, so you have however many tails you have at the end of the game. Again, this is kind of like a last 30 seconds are all that really matters, and I hate the way the overtime is structured for Team Tail Tag. And that's the case with a lot of games like Hoarders too, where if it goes to overtime and you're up 6-2-0-0. I guess that's not really a realistic score. Let's say you're up 4-4-0-0 or something, and then the other two teams in the back grab your tail twice or whatever, and you get down to 1 tail tag, and you end up losing. That's not very fair in my opinion. I wish they cut it off at the overtime and just put it between the 2 final teams. But it's better than DoorDash, so that's all there is to say about that. So next up we got Tiptoe. Tiptoe, I'd probably put this right there. It's an intense game. Again, it's one of those games where like really only the end matters. But there's a little bit of strategy you can use. There's some good griefing opportunity. Overall, it's just a pretty good game. Next up, we got Whirligig. Whirligig is an S tier. It's probably my favorite starting game out of the ones in this chart. Um, there's the middle skip with the middle fan where you can kind of try your luck at it, and if not, you might get knocked off to the side, or you might have to redo that section. Overall, it's just a fantastic game. There's also a couple like small little skips you can do to cut some corners and make the Whirligig go a little bit smoother. So next up we got Egg Siege. I probably like Egg Siege a little bit less than Egg Scramble, but they're very similar. Egg Siege I know has some cool tricks for throwing eggs into your own basket, which can vastly improve the efficiency of your team. But they're not easy to do, and until I learn those, I have Egg Siege slightly below Egg Scramble, but I'm sure once I get better at Egg Siege, it will move up to a B tier game. Next up, we got Hoopsie Legends. I'll probably put this slightly before Hit Parade. Hoopsie Legends is also a fantastic game, especially when you're playing with a squad and you can kind of use some strategy to pull some of the blocks together. It's not as strong of a game in solo mode. In fact, in squad mode, I would have Hoopsie Legends as an S tier game. But since it shows up in the solo rotation too, I'm just going to leave it in A tier. Hoopsie Legends, very similar to Hoopsie Daisy, except there's kind of a cutoff score at the end. That's pretty much all there is to it. Next up, we got Night Fever. I'm actually going to amend what I said about Whirligig earlier and put this just in front of Whirligig. Night Fever is one of my favorite starting round games, just because there's a lot of locations where you can go wrong, and there's a lot of time you can use to make up if you mess up. Overall, it's a really satisfying game to speedrun too, which I really like. And finally, last but not least, we got some Wall Guys. Wall Guys, I'll probably put top of B tier. This is another one of those games where if you're playing with the squad, it's fantastic. You can kind of do some tricks to make it easier. You can communicate, pull some walls for your teammates and help them out. Or you can grief people too, which is a lot of fun. But in solo squads, it's solo mode. It can be very frustrating if you're playing with the squad that you can't communicate with. It just becomes a little bit annoying sometimes. So yeah, this is the final tier list right here. We got Slime Climb as the #1 game, and then Hexagon. Let me see. Are there any other Fall Guys versions on here? Wow, my typing is horrendous right now. Oh man, I'm doing the wrong one. Well, one second, can I go back? Yes, I can. Okay, I'm gonna copy these over real quick. I'm gonna pause the video. I'm gonna copy these over to this newer tier list, and I'll be right back in just a second. All right, what's up? What's up, everyone? I'm back here. I got the tier list 3 uploaded right here, so we're ready to go get back going. We got some more rounds up in here. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get right back into it. Big Fans. Big Fans is right around Dizzying Heights. I'd probably say I like it slightly less than Dizzying Heights. I'd like it slightly more than Dizzying Heights. They're neck and neck. Big Fans, you have the opportunity to go fast on, which I really like. You can move with the fans. You can kind of cut corners. It's just a good game in general. It can get pretty frustrating at times if you keep falling off, but that's the way all the games are. So, just a good game in general. Next up, we got Freezy Peaks. Oh, I dropped it somewhere. Oh, there it is. Freezy Peak. I'd say that's an S tier game. Actually, you know what? Top A tier. Freezy Peak. The reason why I'm debating putting it in S tier is because it's just a very satisfying game. How you kind of climb up to the top and get to the end. I just wish that some of the areas on it are kind of slow. So that's what kept it from being an S tier game. For example, waiting for the punching bags as you're climbing with the mountain. Other than that, I'd say it's a fantastic game and an easy S tier if it had a little bit less weighting on it. Next up, we got Tundra Run. Tundra Run, I'm going to put this in the C tier. It's just not a very exciting game. It's kind of similar to Gate Crash in that regard, where it doesn't really feel like there's a whole lot going on. Now that there are the hexagons on the left side, instead, so that you have an alternate path to the area on the right side, it's gotten better. But just overall, there's not a whole lot to this game. It's not super exciting. It's a C tier game, pretty average. Next up, we got Penguin Pursuit. I'm generally not a super huge fan of the Penguin games. I really like the idea of them randomly showing up, but they're not fantastic games by any stretch, just because some of the grabbing physics are kind of wonky in this game. I'll probably put this one in D tier, slightly under Royal Fumble, just because I don't really have a good reason. They're very similar in my eyes. Yeah, just not a whole lot to say about it. It's just sometimes if you can try to pick them up and then it just doesn't work. So that's the way it is. So next up we got Roll Off. When I'm placing this one, I had Roll Out in B tier. Roll Off is the final game. I'm going to amend my ranking of Roll Off and put this in C tier, right between Tundra Run and Gate Crash, because I didn't realize Roll Out and Roll Off were separate games. Roll Off is pretty much the final version game of Rollout. It's a better version of Rollout. That's all there is to it. I think I talked about this earlier in the video, so I'll leave this at A. Next up, we got Ski-Fall. Ski-Fall is another S tier game. I'm going to put it just below Hexagon. It's fun. It's fast paced. There are a variety of different strategies you can use on Ski-Fall. It's just overall a fantastic game. That's all there is to it. Next up, we got Snowy Scrap. This one is very team dependent. I feel like it's better than a lot of the team games. I'll put this in B tier. It's kind of fun because you got all three teams kind of scrapping together, and there's a little bit of strategy you can use with using the punching bags, and you're kind of fighting your own team too sometimes, but it's not in a bad way by any stretch. And there are very good griefing opportunities in this game too. Other team games, it's not my favorite, but it's one of the better ones, I feel. So next up, we got Thin Ice. This could be a controversial take, but I like this one probably the best out of every game out here so far. The reason why I like Thin Ice more than Hexagon is because you can kind of see everything and you can plan for the future. In Hexagon, yeah, there's some good strategy to it, but a lot of the times you can find yourself isolated and then there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas on Thin Ice, you can kind of see stuff happening as you're playing and then make a plan for where you want to end up at. Whereas with Hexagon, it's just kind of well, sometimes you just have to end up where you end up, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So Thin Ice, I feel like you're in a little bit more control of your own destiny, which is why I like it better than Hexagon. Yeah, I wish sometimes Thin Ice went a little bit quicker at the start. Sometimes I feel like the three full layers is a little bit too much. But overall, it is one of the best games in Fall Guys, for sure. Next up, we got Snowball Survival. I'll probably put this one in D tier. It's close to C tier, and in fact, I'm actually gonna move this Rock and Roll down to C or D tier and put it slightly above Snowball Survival. Snowball Survival. It's not the most interactive game. You can kind of get in a spot and just sit there. A lot of the time, maybe some slight moving around. If you got other people standing next to you, you can grief them. That's what's keeping it high D tier. But there's not a whole lot to the game. It's an exemplary D tier game. So next up, we got Basketfall. It's kind of up there with, if I can find it, Fall Ball. In fact, I'd probably like it a little bit more than Fall Ball. It's a team-based game. You grab the basketballs. You can either shoot them or jump them into the hoops. I feel like Basketball, you're a little bit more in control of your own destiny for a team-based game compared to Fall Ball. but it suffers from a similar fate to a lot of the games like the Penguin Pursuit, where sometimes the grab physics are a little bit wonky. So next up we got Hoverboard Heroes. I've actually only played this game a few times, but from what I've played of it, I really like it, and it's an S tier game. Um, Overall, I'm a huge fan of the games like Slime Climb and Hoverboard Heroes, where as many people pretty much as can make it to the end, make it to the end. It doesn't really matter a ton how you score, unless a ton of people make it. Those are just my favorite types of games in general, just because I feel like that's the best way Fall Guys is you're kind of forced to move along, and if you can keep the pace, you're good. If you can't, you're not good. Next up, we got Power Trip. This is probably another D tier game. I've never lost in Power Trip that I can remember, but it's not super interactive. You grab a battery and you kind of strafe, or you either strafe or you run in the middle between a couple rows of the enemy team squares and you just line them up. There's not a whole lot to it. Not the most interactive game. It's why it's a D tier. So next up we got Roll On. This is probably my favorite variant of the roll games. I'll probably leave this in A tier. It can kind of suck sometimes, getting walloped by a hammer right at the end, right before you hit a checkpoint. But overall, it's just a good feeling game. If you can get a good line on it and just run directly through everything, it feels fantastic. It doesn't feel like it's a free qualify ever, but it's just a good game in general. Next up, we got Short Circuit. This is one of the race-based games where you kind of do a couple laps around the track. I'm generally not a huge fan of the race-based games where it's kind of on a track. I'll leave Short Circuit in C tier. Of the race type games, it's probably my least favorite one. I've only played it a few times, but I never really felt like, okay, this is a good game. Kind of like I do about some of the B tier games. Next up, we got Skyline Stumble. If you asked me a couple months ago or when the game first released, I would have put this higher, probably in A tier. If you ask me now, it's probably bottom of B tier. Skyline Stumble in general is a good game. I really like it except for two parts of it. One of them is the pinball at the end. That can be really annoying if there are too many people there. I wish they had more of them set up so you can kind of like, okay, there are three different pinball ones or whatever, 3 sets of 2 or whatever. So you can just pick the one where you think you're most likely to get on. You might have to run off slightly to the side, just because I feel like the side routes are too slow compared to the pinball that it's not really worth going for them. But the pinball ones are just kind of a random chance whether you can jump onto them or not. And also, I feel like sometimes the button section is really annoying if there are moron enemies. Or, I guess, other people. They're not necessarily enemies, because you can kind of work together. But if you have a bunch of morons that are jumping on the buttons as you're about to fall through, it's frustrating. So Skyline Stumble, it's a B tier game. The other parts of the course are really good, except for those bits. So next up, we got Big Shots. This is another D tier game. It's not a bad game by any stretch, but a lot of the time, it suffers from a similar fate to games like Snowball Survival, where you're kind of just standing there. I'll put it above Penguin Pursuit and Fruit Shoot. It's just not the most interactive game. So next up, we got Perfect Death Match. You know, I'm going to change my ranking for Perfect Match because I think I got the games confused. Perfect Match, that's an F tier game. Perfect Match is assuming I'm reading this correctly, Perfect Match is the version without the club in the middle. Perfect Deathmatch has the club in the middle. I feel like the club in the middle is essential to make Perfect Match a good game. If it doesn't have the club, it's not the worst game in the game, but it's not a good game by any stretch. Whereas with the club in the middle, it's a fantastic game. Next up, we got Button Bashers. I'm going to leave this one unranked. I can't remember. I don't recall playing this one ever. So next up, we'll skip that one and we'll go up to the Slime Scraper. I've probably played this one, but I just can't remember it off the top of my head. So next up, we got Slime Scraper. Slime Scraper, it's up here with Slime Climb and Hover Climb Heroes. I'll probably put it just below Ski Fall. It's similar to it in that you make it to the end, you're good, usually. I like that. It's harder than Slime Climb a little bit. There's a learning curve to it, but once you get it, it's not that bad at all. Um, it's a fun course in general, and it's one that has a lot of replayability compared to a lot of the courses in the game. So next up, we got Bubble Trouble. I'll put Bubble Trouble in the bottom of B tier. There are some things I like about Bubble Trouble, like kind of predicting where they are and trying to race to get to the bubbles. But overall, I feel like it's just a very average game. I don't have a whole lot to say that's positive about it, but I don't really have anything super negative to say about it either. You just try to get as many bubbles as possible. Next up, we got Lily Leapers. That is an A tier game in my opinion. Probably near the bottom of A tier. I feel like Lily Leap. You know what? It's gonna be middle A tier. It's probably slightly above Hit Parade. Lily Leapers. It would be a B tier game if it didn't have the option at the end to go for the middle route, which is a little bit harder, but it saves you a bit of time. That's what redeems it a little bit in my eyes. Overall, it's just kind of a how fast can you get to the end, which I guess by definition it's a race game. But there aren't any super huge difficulty spikes unless you go for the edge, unless you go for the middle route at the end, or unless you kind of get screwed by some of the lily pads in the middle section where you're climbing up. If there are other people around you. Next up, we got Penguin Pool Party. This is slightly better than Penguin Pursuit, probably slightly better than Big Shots, but still not a great game. Again, it suffers from the same fate as the Penguin game, where grabbing the penguins doesn't always work out super well. Even if I feel like I'm directly next to the penguin holding the grab button, it just doesn't always grab them sometimes. That's one of those ones where I feel like if you had a higher grab radius for something like penguin, that would make the game a little bit better. We're reaching the end. I'm gonna take a quick break to drink some water, and I'll be right back. All right, what's up, everyone? I'm back here. It's the next day. Actually, I ended up not doing any more of this. Because I ended up going out for a site visit to a project. So finishing this up, I'll have to take a quick break in just a few minutes to go get my pizza out of the oven, or put my pizza in the oven. But I'll finish this off before the pizza's done, probably. So next up, we're on Stomping Ground right here. Let's see, Stomping Ground. It's one of the harder games for sure. I'd probably put it in B tier. Just based off of the difficulty. In theory, it's not a super great game just because it's very basic, but the difficulty on it makes it so it's actually a ton of fun just because if you do well on it, it feels really good if you do well in Stomping Ground. So I'll leave that in the B tier. Next up, we got Lost Temple. Lost Temple, I'd say out of the final games, it's towards the back end of them. I'll put it. I like it better than Jump Showdown for sure. I'll put it above Rollout down here in C tier. Lost Temple is really kind of dragged down a little bit based off of the randomness of it. It doesn't always feel like it's an entirely skill-based game, but it's definitely an enjoyable game. And you always have a small chance at making a comeback, but sometimes if you just guess wrong if you're near the front and you guess wrong on a door, there's not a whole lot you can do, which kind of sucks. So next up, we got Treetop Tumble. This is a high A tier game. Out of the kind of jungle-based games, I like it generally a little bit more. The lily pad skip at the end it's good fun. And the game itself is difficult enough that it's pretty engaging. even though it's usually a pretty easy qualifier. Next up, we got Some Fruit. You know, Some Fruit, in theory, is a really boring game, but there's some really good griefing opportunities, and that alone leaves it in the C tier just because it has some good redeeming factors. Um, I'll put this just below Tundra Run in front of Lost Temple. It's it's counting fruit. There's a good amount of downtime in the game, but once the slime rises and you're moving up to the platforms, you have some good opportunities to grab people, push them off. Next up, we got Airtime. I've only played this game a few times. Um, I probably am not an expert on this game by any stretch. I'm gonna put this in the D tier though. Um, Probably just between these ones. Um, you just get a strategy and you just run the same strategy over and over again. There's not a whole lot to Airtime. So now we got Full Tilt. Full Tilt's one of the more common game modes. Um, it's I would probably put this one in B tier. It has similar flaws to Seesaw in where you can sometimes just fall, but it's much less so in Full Tilt because you have a little bit more control over your routes and you have a little bit more options, which makes Full Tilt a better game in my opinion. Where it's you're in full control of your destiny in Full Tilt. So next up, I'm not familiar with Leading Light, so I'm going to skip that one. Next up, we got Party Promenade. Party Promenade is in the lower or mid C tier. I'll probably put it in front of Basketball. Party Promenade, it's a good game in theory. I hate the water balloons on it just because those feel like they're borderline unavoidable. It would be a little bit better if there had like walls and stuff you can kind of duck in between or hide behind. I know there are the little bouncy things, but the water balloons shoot over them, so that's kind of useless. Um, I like the general gameplay loop of it, of using the trapezes in order to kind of skip parts of the level, and it just generally flows really well. Um, there are just a couple weak sections of the level. Next up, we got Pipe Dream. I've only played this one a few times as well. It's kind of an average game. You can take different paths in order to do different obstacles, I guess. None of the obstacles are incredibly difficult, but it's a good race game because since all the obstacles are relatively not difficult, it's more of how fast can you clear it, and it's a long enough track where even if you make a mistake or two, you still have an opportunity to come back. Next up, we got Sweet Thieves. This is one of the limited time game modes. I have played it. Um, it's just generally not very fun. If you're on defense, you just sit there and you spin in circles and try to grab people as they're picking up the sweets. And if you have randoms on your squad, you're just kind of at the whim of the randoms. So defense isn't super fun in that regard. Offense is a little bit more exciting just because you have options. But if you're playing against a coordinated squad, it becomes nearly impossible to succeed. I'm going to put Sweet Thieves in D tier above, probably slightly above Peng, or slightly above Frushi. Next up, we got Blast Ball. I am very, very good at being second place on Blast Ball. But despite that, I usually have a pretty good time while playing it. I'll probably put this near the top of B tier, above Jump Club, I would say. There are some good like little tricks you can do with using holding the blast balls and running up to people to kill them that make this game a little bit more engaging. Next up, we got Bounce Party. Oh, I accidentally clicked off of it. It is not an F tier game. Bounce Party, it kind of depends on how many people are playing it for how good it is. I'll probably put this in high D tier as an average. Bounce Party, you jump on the orange bouncy platforms, you build up height, and then you jump through the hoops. One second, I'm going to take a quick pause to put my pizza in the oven. Alright, we're back. I'd be shocked if this video isn't done in 20 minutes, so I'm not too worried about having to take another cut. Where were we? We were on. I felt like it was ready. Oh, bounce party. Yeah, bounce party. If there are too many people on the lobby, you can kind of just like bounce into people, and that just makes it so it's not very fun. Like you could be doing nothing wrong and still just kind of get ruined by other people. Generally, you have enough time to make it back, but if it happens several times, you're usually just toasted. Now we got Hexaring. Hexaring is probably the worst hexagon game, and in fact, it's not even an S tier game in my opinion. I still generally have a lot of fun playing it. Um, I am going to put this one probably just in front, just before Hoopsie Daisy, I feel. Hexaring, I feel like it's gotten better. Initially, now that they have it so it starts out slower and you have a little bit of time to acclimate yourself. The first few times I played it, it was really, really difficult for me to figure out how fast I needed to run. And now that I have a little bit better of an understanding on it, so it's a lot of fun. Um, It can be very difficult sometimes, and sometimes the games take a while, but the games taking a while just makes it a little bit more exciting, especially because you can see how the field is looking too, so you can kind of plan for the future, which I like. Next up, we got Speed Circuit. I haven't played this one in a while, actually. Um, Speed Circuit of the racetracks, I like it better than Short Circuit. This Speed Circuit's probably a B tier track in my opinion. I will probably put this just before Full Tilt. Um, Generally, Speed Circuit, there's not a whole lot to say about it. You just if you can run without bumping into the little donut things, you're in a good spot. If you can't, you might be in trouble. Otherwise, you just go fast. Next up, we got the Swiveler. I like the Swiveler a lot. I'll probably put this low A tier. The issue with the Swiveler is either it always seems to either end immediately or go on for forever. I wish that it was more similar to games like Stomping Ground or what was the Snowball Survival, where you just have to survive a set amount of time. I feel like that would improve the gameplay for the Swiveler. But in general, the Swiveler is a very good game. You, it just feels satisfying to play because you're moving. You feel like you're moving so quickly. Now we have Track Attack. Track Attack's another really good game. I'll probably put this one between Fall Mountain and Hexaring. Track Attack is a game where you just kind of rush down the middle and then you try to stay up on top as long as possible. You know you're going to get bumped off though, and you're going to have to get back onto the middle track. I used to like Track Attack a little bit less, but once I realized that you could jump on from the little slime and the slime ramps that kind of move down and then go up at the end, I started to like Track Attack a lot more because it feels a little bit more satisfying when you hop back up on the fast path and then be able to run quickly through the map. Next up, we got Volleyball. Volleyball is a game I like a lot in solos, not a lot in squads. If it was in solos, I'd probably put it in the S tier. For squads, I'd probably put it in low C tier, around where Fall Ball is. I'll split the gap and call it a B tier game. Probably just in front of Bubble Trouble here. Volleyball, I like it because there's some good strategy with how you hit the ball, changing where it ends up going. But so the issue with it in squad modes is especially if you're playing with random squads, it's really really hard to coordinate. So you'll have multiple people going for a ball at the same time, and then it'll kind of just fall, and there's not a whole lot you can do there. I haven't played a bunch of Bean Hill Zone, so I'm going to skip that one. And now we're moving on to some of the new maps in the game. Starting out with Cosmic Highway. I'll put this one in A tier, I think. I'll probably put it in front of Perfect Deathmatch before Hoopsie Legends. I really like how fast Cosmic Highway plays. Generally, you can just kind of run across it, just get a good line, and then you're done. There's not a whole lot of strategy involved in it, but you get rewarded well for making well-timed jumps. So I like Cosmic Highway a good amount. Frantic Factory, I feel like, is on the weaker end of the new games. I'll put Frantic Factory in the D tier. Probably top of D tier, I would say. If it lets me put it there. There we go, I'll move Snowball Survival back. Frantic Factory, I feel like the issue with Frantic Factory is it's too random. You can have your own area, and you can be sitting there waiting for buttons to pop up, and it just nothing happens. And that is really, really frustrating as someone who's trying to, like, you can be playing it perfectly and still not qualify. I feel like that really drags Frantic Factory down. I wish it was kind of more similar to Ski-Fall in such a way that you completed an obstacle course, you get a button, and then you jump off, and then you run a new track or whatever, and they just mixed up the track or whatever. I feel like that would make Frantic Factory a little bit better. Next up, we got I did the thing again. We got Hexaterrestrial here. Hexaterrestrial is probably my favorite map in the game right now. Or no, I'll say second favorite after Thin Ice. Hexaterrestrial, it sounds stupid. It feels too easy. Just because it starts out so slowly. And there's still so many people that die. And I don't really understand how so many people die at the start of Hexaterrestrial. And then you get to the end of the game, and it's just kind of a, well, there's you, maybe one other person left, and it's just kind of a waiting game to see who messes up first. The fact that it goes on so long is probably what drops it below Thin Ice at the end. Just because you don't see your imminent doom or the opponent's imminent doom like you do in Thin Ice, which is a really good feeling to have. In Hexaterrestrial, it's more of a whoever makes a mistake first. I feel like generally I like that kind of thing where it's like if you get rewarded for playing well, but in Thin Ice, it's just a good feeling seeing like, okay, I'm about to win this. So that's why I kind of prefer Thin Ice to Hexaterrestrial. Next up, we got Hyperdrive Heroes. Hyperdrive Heroes is kind of an interesting spot where, in theory, I feel like it is a really, really fun game. But in practice, some of the jumps on it, specifically at the start, always seem to screw me. I'll probably put Hyperdrive Heroes in mid B tier. I've played it a good amount, but I feel like once I get better at it and can get past the first little bit more consistently, I'll move it up to A tier. Just because there are some really good griefing off. You know what? I'll probably put it bottom A tier actually right now, just because of the good griefing opportunities once you get past the start. But for right now, at least while I'm pretty bad at the start, it plays very slowly. So, yeah, that's that game. Next up, we got Pixel Painters. Now, this one will very much vary based off of who you're playing with. If you're playing with the bad random, F tier. There's nothing you can do. If you're playing with the full squad, probably A tier. I'll split the gap and call it a C tier. In general, if you're playing with the squad, it's going to be a fun game. Or if you're playing with a squad and maybe a random or two, you'll still have a good time. Oh no. Okay, we'll do a quick history real quick. Saved. Alright, so yeah, if you're playing with the squad, maybe a random or two, you'll still have a good time. But yeah, just having to rely on someone else entirely to not be a moron. Even one moron screws you entirely in Pixel Painters, which kind of ruins it. So I'll put this in mid C tier. Probably just in front of Fall Ball, I'd say. So next up, we got Space Race here. Space Race is a good course. I don't get as much enjoyment out of it as I do something like Cosmic Highway, so it's definitely going to be in the B tier. I'd probably put this just before Stomping Ground in front of Full Tilt. Space Race, if you have a good race, it feels very good, but it doesn't feel quite as rewarding whenever you do well for no good reason. It just you don't really feel like you're getting out in front of people quite as much as you do in other games where there aren't as many different vertical levels such as in such as in Cosmic Highway. So I'll leave Space Race in the B tier. Next up, we got Star Chart. I really like Star Chart. It's going to be high A tier. It's not quite enough into the top tier to get into the top tier levels, but it's definitely high A tier. I'll probably put this in between Big Fans and Roll On. What I like about Star Chart is whenever you jump on the buttons, it kind of shows you a bunch of random buttons or random paths too. And I really like being able to jump on the buttons, see the random paths ahead of me, and then being able to like memorize a map and follow the map instead of having to follow other people. It makes it a lot more fun, especially if you go your own way, just like Gabrielle in High School Musical. Star Chart's definitely an A tier map. And last but not least, because it's not Hoarders, we got Tiptoe Finale. Tiptoe Finale is an interesting take on Tiptoe. It's not bad. I probably don't like it. I probably like it slightly more than the original Tiptoe. It's a hard one to place. The fact that it's a team game makes it, but it's a team game, but works out pretty well as a squad game. I'll probably put this top of B tier, just below Wall Guys. The weakness of Tiptoe Finale, in my opinion, is how it's kind of a random game. It suffers from the same thing as Tiptoe. But I kind of like how your entire squad is kind of on your own and isolated, and it's just a race to the death on Tiptoe Finale. So yeah, I guess I'll zoom out real quick, show my final tier list. So the top games, in my opinion, the ones I have the most fun on: Thin Ice, Hexaterrestrial, Slime Climb, Hexagon, Ski Fall, the Slime Scraper, Night Fever, Hoverboard Heroes, and the Whirly Gig. And my least favorite games here: Perfect Match, Team Tail Tag, DoorDash, Seesaw, and Hoarders. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace out.